In this episode, we're going to be talking with the co-founder of Ultimate Contribution Uncovered, Dino Rakitzis, about how we become indoctrinated into values that are not our own without even realizing it. We'll also explore how uncovering your own values gives you access to creating the life you really want. So if you know that there's more for you in life, but you're having trouble finding out what that is, this episode is for you.
Welcome to Follow the Calling.
Be confident in knowing how to get the results you want.
Be secure in knowing who you really are.
Be inspired by the possibility of the difference you're here to make.
Follow your calling and experience true fulfillment. So, welcome to another episode of Follow the Calling. Now, if you're anything like us, you have that feeling that there's more for you in life, and you've spent most of your life trying to figure out what more is. You've spent thousands of dollars on books and courses and certifications that you hoped would give you the answer, and you still haven't found it. So today, we're going to explore why this might be happening for you. And we have the honor and the pleasure of being joined by our friend and mentor, Dino Rakitzis. Now, Dino has spent a lot of time in the space of values and working with people to uncover them. And I am excited about having this conversation today. Dino, always a lot of fun to be in your space.
Awesome. It's a pleasure to be here. And it's a pleasure to hear an intro that wasn't read off the website. So thank you, Tim, for coming at it from your heart. That was awesome. Appreciate it.
Thanks for being here, Dino. We really appreciate it. We're looking forward to having this conversation.
Me too.
Dino, with this conversation about values, you know, a lot of people have got different ideas about what values are. They've got different idea about what the value of having values are. And this is what we want to sort of delve into deeper in this conversation. And I think the first question I feel that we'd like to ask you around this, even if it's just to start off this conversation to see where on earth it goes, is to ask you, what do you feel is the biggest obstacle people are facing in their search for knowing what that feeling of more for them is in life? And why do you think that might be?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges is separating, or delineating what are your values and what are the values of the people around you, and the environment around you, and the culture around you, and that can include your work. Like, what are the values of your work environment? And what's the archetype that one needs to be? And what I mean by archetype is like, what's the criteria for the most successful person in that organization? And therefore, what are the values associated with that archetype that everyone's almost heading for? You know what it's like when everyone's like heading for maybe a same promotion. It's like, who do you need to be to get that promotion? And it's like, what are the values associated with that? And then it's like, okay, well, then you've also got the values that you were brought up with, right? And you've got the values of your parents, your siblings, if you have any, your family, if you're surrounded by them, your friendship groups, your peer groups. I mean, like, one of the toughest things, I think, Andy and Tiff, like, I think you guys will agree, is complexity, like the complexity challenge. You know, we talked about JPEGs and a bit, but as you can see there, I could carry on going about all the different values that you come up against throughout your life, that you're experienced, that you're exposed to. And it's just phenomenal. It would take me the entire podcast to talk through all the different examples. So I think the main problem is complexity, is the complexity of knowing what are my values and what are the values of that around me, and creating that delineation to reduce that complexity and just think about, well, let's just focus on what I value and then attract both, or put myself in an environment where those values can perpetuate in a way that's successful for you. And that by being the most you, means that you're going to be successful in that environment.
Yes.
And that's what I think is hard for people to do, because going back to your questions, because they just don't know, what are my values versus what are my parents' values? Like, do I value morality, or is it actually that my parents just kept telling me to do the right thing and it just kind of got bludgeoned into my subconscious?
Yeah.
Like, actually, I'm not so bothered about being right or wrong as to my benevolence. Is it my intentions? Are my intentions good? And that's actually what I care most about, And yeah. So before I carry on, I think that's kind of where I was going. What comes to mind when I think about what's stopping people from knowing what's most meaningful to them is delineating between those two things, what I value and what the values are around me.
No, I totally get that. That's great. Thank you. So it's like, you talk about this complexity. We go out there into the world, and there's there's an infinite number of variables, isn't there? And we interface with the world. We interact with the world, and that's an important part of what it means to be alive. So amongst all that complexity, there's so much importance, I feel, on knowing who we are amongst all of that, knowing who it is that we are before we go out there into the world, before the world's complexity interacts with us or we interact with it. It's like, who are we before all of that? And it's like, because we're born into that complexity and we grow up amongst it. So immediately, before we know it, we're amongst all of these different value structures and these different ideas of right and wrong, good and bad that come our way, that kind of just we take on as our own, don't we? And it's like, by the time it comes to really mattering in your life, when you actually want to create something and move forward and aim for something meaningful, it's like, well, what do I aim at? Who am I? And if you're not aiming at something, then you're sure as hell not going to get it. Right? Or you might happen there by accident, but if you do, you won't even realize that you're there because you've not aimed for it in the first place, right? So without an aim, you will never reach the life that you want. But you have to know what it is you're aiming for, and to know what it is you're aiming for, you have to know who you are and what you want. And this, for me, is speaking to the value of knowing your values, knowing who you are at the core of your being, what really matters to you, irrespective of the value structures that you operate within.
Yes. Yeah, beautifully said. I think it felt like to me what's coming up there is to talk into how values are formed, or at least how I believe values are formed. And maybe we kind of might agree on this given our backgrounds and research, like similar research areas. So I believe our values are formed by, I think up to 4, there's not too much going on in terms of value structure. I think there's a lot, it's sort of egoic. But then I think between 4 and sort of 10, 12, 13, a really super developmental time. Like, this is where the brain has the most neuroplasticity out of all of the time in your entire life. What does that mean? That means you take in and retain information and able to make change with that information. So you are literally molding and developing, but you're also instantiating. You're bringing a structure to your feedback of the environment that you're interacting with.
Yeah.
And that structure and that framework that you're building out, I believe is where the values start to form. So what do I mean? So let's say, you go out to a party and your mum and dad take you to a party and you start to see some things going on. This is a wonderful social experiment, just to go out and just be there at these kind of parties, because everyone's figuring themselves out. But like, so you go out and you see your mum start to give lots of attention to lots of other people and not you. And you start to see, how does that feel? For some people who really value acknowledgement, well, you start to see anyway, you start to go, well, I don't like that. But you don't really know why you don't like that. You just go, I just don't like that. I'm just not really a fan of that. And now I'm kind of left on my own and I don't really like what's going on here, even if they're having a great time. Mm-hmm. Whereas another individual, exactly the same situation, might be going, oh, that's so cool. Look at my mum. Like, everyone loves my mum, and like everyone's having such a good time. And it's so cool. How cool is this that my mum's like, everyone loves her?
And I'm free to go and do what I want as well.
I'm free to go, right? That's a beautiful position. Yeah, I'm free to go and eat the Big Mac in the corner that I wasn't allowed to eat, or the cake. Suddenly that cake's disappeared. Where did the cake go, Dino? I don't know. You were playing with my mum, so
I was valuing cake.
yeah. So what I'm trying to say is that you value cake, but yeah. So in that example, what you're doing is you're hitting up against your environment and you're making a cognitive appraisal, if you like, of that situation. And as you do that between the most developmental time in your life, I believe you instantiate a framework of what you think life should be like. And therefore what you think, what you value most, what's most important to you, what's painful to not have in play, and what seems to be powerful when these things are in alignment, and what seems to be painful when they're not. And you learn that. But I don't think you necessarily consciously learn that. I don't think you necessarily as a 12-year-old go, I value acknowledgement and benevolence. So probably not. You just probably go, I don't like it when I'm not center of attention. And even then you probably don't do that level of self-awareness. But it's there. It's instantiated. But what's really interesting in the conversation that we're having, I think, guys, is that, and tell me if I'm like going off on one here, but I think when we think of how values are formed, yes, we're learning from the feedback of our environment. Great. We're instantiating a framework for the rest of our life. And within that framework are these sets of values. But also you're finding out what you don't like about other people's value set. You're already doing it, I believe, at that age. So when your mum or dad goes, it's really important that you're, and not things like punctuality, right? And this is where people get things wrong with values. That's a belief, not a value. Like just being punctual is not a value. That's a societal rule that perhaps you either abide by or don't abide by. It's more of a belief rather than sort of a deep, instantiated, emotional, like subconscious value. But let's say they say, I'm trying to think of an example. Let's say they go, do the right thing. It's like maybe what we talked about before, like do the right thing. Come on, always got to do the right thing. Always do the right thing. Always do the right thing. And you just bump up against that. It's like, no, I'm not. I'm clashing against this. And you have lots of fights around that. Well, look, your parents might have the value of morality. Your mom or dad might have the value of morality. And it's not about being well-intentioned. It's about doing the right thing. It doesn't matter if you meant to do the right thing or not. It's about actually doing the right thing. Okay. But you are going, yeah, but I meant to do the right thing. And that's where you're clashing. We're creating clash. So I don't think we imbibe. I think no matter what happens to us, I think our values stay. I think we still, but as degrees of how much you let that morality value in this example dictate what you believe your values might be. So then you go on to be an adult, okay? And then you pick from a list of values and you say, oh yeah, morality, that's one. Because your subconscious goes, whoa, that's been in our life a lot. Maybe morality is our value.
I'm good at that.
I'm good at that. I'm good at that. I seem to be good at doing the right thing. Yes, I'm good at it. Yeah. But then you start living out through morality and it still doesn't quite feel right. Well, that's because actually perhaps your value is benevolence, but you haven't quite uncovered that. But what I'm getting at is how values are formed will always form. We don't choose them. They're there. But it's important to create the delineation between, was morality mine? Was that really mine? Or was it my parents? Or was mine benevolence? And it's always bloody been benevolence. But somehow this morality thing keeps getting in the way. And how I've described it there makes it quite simple. Well, clearly morality is your parents and benevolence is yours. But that's because I'm giving you a clear and easy example. Try doing that for yourself. It's not actually as straightforward and simple.
No, it's like you've often said to us in the past in conversation that if you're in the jar, you can't see the label, right? So
can't read the label, right?
Yeah, if you are the contents of the jar, you can't read the label. Whereas to other people, it's clear as.
Yeah,
and it's like, try doing that for yourself. It's a very difficult thing, isn't it? And what you say about when you say about the difference between benevolence and morality as values, people might sort of think, oh, well, they're close enough. But that subtle difference, isn't it, between benevolence and morality, that subtle difference across the time of your life creates a chasm of difference in the results that you're going to get, right?
Good point. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
so
it's like, great point.
I think that it's like that for me is part of the value of uncovering your values and getting really clear on that and digging really deep, as you say, to uncover what really are your values and what have been your interpretation of the value structures that you've been born into. Because when you get really clear, you're clear on the nuances that make you different from other people, because they're also the nuances that make you unhappy versus happy in certain situations, you know. And it's just knowing where that is going, where the weather suits your clothes. Then, you know, you're able to do that, because until you know what's on the label of the jar, you don't know what's going to suit what kind of environment you're going to thrive in. You know what I mean? Exactly.
Yeah, I like using the car analogy, because it's like, if you don't know what car you're driving, you don't know what road will best suit your car. You may have a 4x4 and you're driving on the freeway, and it's like, well, actually, you could be going off-road when no one else could be going off-road. And you might actually have way more fun going off-road. If you're on a Ferrari, like, you're much better off on a racetrack than you are like on a high street. Who cares if you've got a Ferrari on a high street, right? Like, you're not really going to let loose. Yeah, with loads of speed bumps, right? And you're certainly not going to be able to go off-road. So then if you start to create a path for your life that is off-road, in this analogy, right? But you actually have a Ferrari, man, you're going to have a really tough time the whole king journey, right? The whole journey, you're going to be having a tough time. So yeah, I think you're so right there, mate. Yeah, really good point.
I love that. I love that, because I just like reflecting in my own life, and it feels to me like there's a world full of people who are driving all the variety of cars on the freeway.
Right. Yeah.
And so because that's what we're told that we're supposed to do. Oh, well, there's a nice road right there. It's nicely paved. It's smooth. Like, this is the way to find your success. But you have everything from, you know, motorcycles to Ferraris and you know, F-250 pickup trucks, like driving on trying to find what more is, trying to find that fulfillment by driving on the same road. And when you think about that, it's just like, there's no way that all of those cars are going to live to their fullest potential driving on that kind of road.
Right. Never mind the fact that you're then going to jam up that road. No one's getting anywhere.
No one's going to have any fun then, are they?
No one's going to have any fun. But that's really beautiful, Tim. I like that. That's a good extension of the analogy. I've not thought about that. So thank you. That's what I love about these conversations. I want to end up learning more, and I'm already learning more. So
yeah. Absolutely. This feels like we could already feel like we could be here for hours. This feels like,
oh my God,
get my teeth into this, because this to me
inevitably.
This really does feel like a conversation that, like, in getting my teeth into, I understand myself better for having it, you know, and when I understand myself better for having, when I understand myself better in any situation, I'm always more empowered to get the results I want, aren't I? Because it's like, this is the most sophisticated machine that exists on the planet, the human being. And it's like, have I read the user's manual? It's like, no. It's like, but this for me feels like reading the user's manual of the most sophisticated machine on the planet. It's like, there's so much possible here, and yet we have so little access to using it to its fullest potential. And in fact, we can actually use it in a way that doesn't serve us. It ends up breaking, as you're saying, you know, using a Ferrari and taking it off road.
Yeah.
So it's about understanding the nature of the vehicle. So, and of course, everyone's different in that sense, right? Is that true? You would say, Dino, in terms of values, everyone is unique?
Absolutely. Yeah. 100% completely. And why? And I'm glad we had the conversation about how values are formed, because this will make sense.
Yeah. You
know that there's a one in, I think most people would agree now, that you've got a 1 in 400 trillion chance of even being born. So you're unique straight off the bat. But more importantly to this conversation, no one will ever have the same genetic makeup that you have, and no one has ever. So has ever or will ever. So you're completely unique from a genetic makeup. And most, again, scientists and psychologists now agree that, I mean, they did a massive, I don't know if you guys know about this, they did massive sort of like twin study, right? And I'm pretty sure they're into like the tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of twins. I have to get the exact numbers, but a massive amount of twins, right? And they looked at them and they were trying to understand how much of their upbringing was genetically defined, and nurture sort of the environment.
Environment.
And it ended up being that 49% of their character traits were down to genetics and 51% down to, it's effectively 50-50, right?
Yeah.
Which is kind of what we've all really, let's be honest, been thinking, that it's probably a bit of both. So genetically you're unique, bang. Then the other 50%, if you think of the classmates you had, the weather, all the way down to like what home you lived in, your parents, the school that you went to, like everything, no one will ever have that same cocktail of experiences ever again. The political environment, the economic environment. Right. So no one's going to have that set of experiences ever again. And no one has ever had those experiences. So you are, to be honest, the center of your universe, right? So therefore, with all those different experiences, okay, I believe, and different genetic makeup. So epigenetically and like sort of nurturing wise, like I believe we're all unique. And then, so therefore the values have to reflect that uniqueness, I believe, generally. And I'm saying have to as if we define them, we don't. But I believe, therefore, the way that values are formed, as I said, of like going out there and listening to the environment and going, oh, I like that bit, don't like that bit. Oh, I like that bit, don't like that bit. That value construct is happening because you're interacting with your environment. And because I believe that the genetic makeup too, I do believe there's a bit of both. So therefore, yeah, completely unique. It would be weird if it wasn't. And that's why when we use generic terms, I say generic, dense words, like words that have dense meaning, like benevolence, like morality. We have to be super clear on what we mean by that. So what do I mean by benevolence? May mean have a slightly different nuance to what you might mean, Andy, or you might mean Tiff. So it's super important as well when you're thinking about values to be like, I know they're words, but they're symbols to what they actually mean. And it's in that meaning is where you get a lot of the uniqueness. So you and me might have benevolence as a core value, or wisdom perhaps based on this, or understanding based on this podcast here. But what we actually mean by each of those is going to also be different. So yeah, I hope that helps. So not only in the way that they're formed, but also what we actually mean by each of those values, I believe is what creates a difference in our lives.
Sure. And our experience of life up until that point is most of, I feel, tell me if I'm wrong, what has created that meaning for us. So we have the meaning is in the how we've experienced the contrast of life. So exactly. It's like like you were saying, two people can look at the same thing and see two very different situations. One person can see it's raining and go, oh, that's terrible. Another person can look out and see it's raining and go, oh, brilliant, thank you for the rain. It's like my plants are going to flourish. We're not going to have a drought this summer. And so two people are seeing the same situation, having two very different experiences. And the same for when you look at words. As you were saying, like two people can look at the word benevolence and have completely different meanings for it. Well, when I say completely different meanings, this is, again, it's a nuanced difference, isn't it?
Yes.
A nuanced difference that across the course of time of your life makes a huge, like a chasm of difference. So understanding what those words actually mean for you, it's like you might like the idea of having a value of trust or peace or whatever it is. But what do those words actually mean to you? Because maybe the reason you think that you like the sound of these values is because of what you've been indoctrinated to is right and wrong and is good and bad. And it really is teasing apart, as you said right from the get-go, what are our values and what are the values of the structures that we've been born into.
Yes.
Yeah,
There's two things that are coming up there. One is, of course, our values can continue to evolve. I think it's probably the right way to develop over time. Like it doesn't just stop at 12, 13. I don't want to give that impression, actually. I just realized it's just that's where I think a lot of the instantiation's happening, like the building, the crafting, the initial crafting of those values. Yes. And then they seem to perpetuate in pattern over time. But you could have a massive crisis at some point in past 14 or past 20, past 30, past 40. And that can shake what you believe. And this is ultimately what we're talking about, is like, what's most meaningful to you? We're not talking about it's lower, it's just that lower level to believe. It's like, what's actually most meaningful to you? What's important to you? What drives you? What motivates you? What drives you to act or react in a moment? What motivates you across time? And I think one of the questions that was coming up for me, Andy, was when you were saying that, was like, let's take the example of, two people seeing things, the same thing in two different ways.
Yeah.
So why are they seeing that in two different ways? Well, it's because they value different things. But why do they value different things? What a wonderful question. And one that would take probably another hour, well, many hours to go through. Because I think what tends to happen is, I believe, that's where differences start to become less and less. So, for example, I think, if we think of the directionality and the hierarchy of values, okay, because you've opened to tin of worms with asking about it being unique. So I'm going to try not to open it out too much. But imagine you've got like, your values are guiding you to what you value most, right? And it's a hierarchy of values then. So, but there is a point, I think, where a lot of us meet. And I think that's just a belief, right? And I think this is where it starts to get existential. Like, do we all just believe in love and we just got different roads to the same destination that is love, for example? Or do we all ultimately want to reduce suffering and get to pleasure? Like, you could start to get at that level where I think most of us would fit under that sort of bracket. But I wouldn't necessarily call that a value, or if I did call that a value, it would be the highest value. But why I think that's useful to know, because then we can connect with each other and go, look, underneath all this, we're just trying to reduce suffering, or we're just looking for whatever love means for each other. But then even then, love means different things for each other. But take it as an example, a category of what's the one thing we all agree on. And that's quite difficult to pin down, I think. I think people, psychologists and stuff, have struggled to pin that down, but there seems to be this belief that there is something there that connects us all in that way.
Yeah.
But what's useful, I think, is to know, well, what's Andy's route to that one thing? What's Tiffany's route to that one thing that we all believe in? And what I mean by route is like, what are the guiding stars to that North Star, if you like? What's the guiding stars to get you to that place where you actually feel in alignment with love? You actually feel that alignment in your body. And I think that's why it's useful to talk at the level of values, because it is our unique play and our unique spin and experience of that journey to the one thing that we probably all potentially agree on is the most important thing for us.
And the other thing is,
it's sometimes too abstract, right? And when it's too high level, it's too abstract, and then it's difficult to grab hold of.
It is, and especially in times when catastrophe hits, like when this nuclear bomb goes off in your life, like maybe a really close loved one gets diagnosed with a disease and they're given a short amount of time to live, or maybe illness hits, or you lose somebody, or something catastrophic happens in your world where it just pulls all the carpet from under your feet. And it's like, well, who are you then? And it's like, that's really, for me, where the rubber hits the road of knowing who you are. Because, you can, it's like, when you said about the route to that one single point that we all agree on, well, that's it, isn't it? It's like, along the way, it doesn't, just because we have this beautiful ideal at the pinnacle of the hierarchy of values that we all might agree on, it doesn't occur to us in our everyday experience that we're there right now, because we deal with everyday stuff like old age, sickness, and death, which is a basic reality of human existence. We need to be able to feel as though our actual living experience is that love that we aspire to. It's a lofty ideal, but it means nothing if it's not my living experience every day. But to know I'm on my way to that, right, is to be on the path, and knowing what the path is to have your values uncovered, because it's your values that keep you aligned, like you say, the constellations in the sky that keep you pointed towards the North Star of your vision, of your ultimate highest vision for your life. It's like they keep you, no matter what's going on. The way I understand it is that they keep you oriented along the way, no matter what happens, because it can something can come along and it can really shake your world. And it's in those times that you really, really do need to know who you are, because stuff can take you down quite understandably. Stuff can really take you out in life. Mm-hmm. And then, who are we going to be for everyone around us as well?
Right. I really feel like, that's a major difference in how people experience these life-altering events. If you know who you are, if you know where you stand, then even if it means that some of your values shift and change, I feel like you're in a grounded place to respond to that situation. Mm. But what happens most of the time, it's happened to me, was that I didn't know that. I wasn't grounded in who I was. And when life came around and really shook me, then there was a crumbling effect. Mm-hmm. And it really took me down and out. And from there, I've rebuilt. I've since uncovered my values. And now I feel like I have, more direction in my life than I've ever had. And I feel that sense of being grounded and knowing who I am and where I stand. So if this kind of event were to happen again, I would be in a much better place to respond to that, I guess, is really what I want to say, and to not fall apart, to not just fall apart,
because you know who you are in the face of it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing. It's knowing what path you're on that gives you the experience of the everyday experience of having that value, that overarching hierarchical value of love, or whatever the highest vision is. You have to know you're on the path to get in there. It's almost like reverse engineering the journey, isn't it? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Well, and that's why it's so frustrating. Sorry, Dino. That's why it's so frustrating, right? Because I just trust that most of the people that are listening to this podcast really resonate with this feeling of more. There's something more for me in life. There's something more for me in life. And I keep searching for it, and I keep trying to find what that is, but I can't put my finger on it exactly. And nothing really seems to be working. Nothing really seems to be answering what that is for me. So I don't know where to go. And this for me is one of the things that has made all the difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think if you take the car analogy, just to make this super specific. So if we take the all-encompassing, the thing that kind of joins us all, right? Like, which may be to move forward, to drive. We all want to drive. We all want to move forward. So it's so that's the thing that's most common. And as you get lower down into the hierarchy, like you start, you have this ultimate then vision for you, right? Okay, well, what is my destination then? Okay, so if I want to drive, well, where am I heading? And that may be a very different destination to you, Annie, and to you, Tiff. Yeah. But then it's like, then I keep going all the way down the levels of like, okay, well, how do I get there? What are my milestones? What are the checkpoints I need to hit? And then all the way down to, well, what car am I driving? And how good am I at driving this car? What skills do I have as a driver? And then all the way down to the embodied action, to actually changing gear, to like shifting like clutch control if you've even got a bloody manual, or is it an automatic and you're just stepping on the gas. So it's like when it gets down to the embodied level, I think that's where there's most uniqueness, right? Because it's just, there's more nodes, as you can imagine. As you go down, there's more like information nodes and variation nodes. So when it comes to chaos, if I were to say to you, just keep driving, it's like, okay, yeah, that is kind of useful. But it doesn't tell me exactly what I need to do next, right? Or just keep going, even sometimes just keep going to your destination. That can even give you a little bit more. Okay, all right, so at least I need to be aiming at that sort of direction. So even if there's fog in front of you, you're driving and you cannot see in front of you, because that's kind of what chaos is like, isn't it? It's like it's just fog. You don't know whether to go left or right, or if you go left, I'm going to get more lost, or right, I'm going to get more lost. Whereas if someone just says to you, and this is where values can be super useful, just remember what car you have, right? And then remember to stick it into first and just go and start moving a little bit further forward. And can you see some stars that's starting to appear as you look up? It's a bit like when you look up at the night sky, there seems to be more stars appear. Don't know if you guys get that idea.
Yeah.
But yeah, so as you kind of go on and you start looking for the stars because you know they're there, you're way more confident that they're there, and you've seen them before because you've defined them, you've uncovered them, sorry. So you know that they've been there before, you start to look out for them. It's like, okay, well, when I'm in chaos, I'd much rather have that kind of discussion where it's like, it's tailored to me. It's like, I know I've got a Ferrari, okay? I know what I'm good at as a driver. I know what I value. I know I've got these guiding stars, but I also know what car I drive. And then I've got these checkpoints along the way that I know I've got to be hitting. And now I've got this vision. That's far more of utility and useful when you're in a chaos and the fog is surrounding you than just knowing that you should drive, and that you've got a car and you look, come on, man, everyone's got a car. Just drive, just move forward. Just head forward. Yeah, but like, have I got an electric? Have I got a diesel? Have I got a truck? Have I got a tractor? Like, what am I doing? Like, why am I here? Who am I? Right? It just starts to escalate. But yeah, just because I loved your point, Andy, but I just wanted to kind of gloss it just a little bit with my understanding. I'm not saying it is right, but that was really good because it helped me actually understand, why it's more useful to have these things. Yeah. Like values, vision, skills, like know yourself in that way when you're in chaos.
Got it.
It makes sense.
Yes.
But,
It does. I really like how you've specified that. It feels more simple and easy to cognitize for me. Thank you for that, Dino. I appreciate that clarification.
Yeah, no worries.
So I feel like that's like the perfect setup to take us into speaking more specifically about, well, now I have my values. What do I do with them? But this is where I really want to start is, Dino, how do you feel like uncovering your values really helps people harness that feeling of more to actually take them somewhere? And I think you illustrated this beautifully in the car analogy, but I want to bring this into the actual vision, mission, and values, and how that all comes together.
Yeah, and so I guess the question is how these things help people uncover like more, like when they're trying to understand like there's this more, but I don't necessarily know what the more is. Yeah. So I was in exactly that position when I finished. I hadn't finished actually. Finished it in my mind, but I hadn't actually finished. I was
wished you were finished.
Yeah, exactly. I was at a job where I said to my dad at the time, I was like, I just feel like it's chipping away at my soul every day. And sometimes it's a job for people. Sometimes it's a relationship for people, whatever the circumstance might be. But for me, my mum had just passed away after like 5 years of motor neurons disease, which was effectively a nightmare. But again, it's that chaos that we talked about. So not only do I have the chaos of that fog, but I also have this and the complexity of illness and death and that kind of thing. It's not as simple as just I'm sad, right? Like there's a complexity to that chaos. And then there's also this chaos of like, I know I'm not where I'm meant to be. I don't know and it's so difficult to comprehend that. I'll put much more to that. It's just like, if someone goes, well, what do you mean? It's like, well, I don't really know. I just know I shouldn't be where I am right now, but I don't know where to go next.
It's a feeling, isn't it?
It's a complete feeling of just like, but I know I'm not where I should be. And I remember looking at my job going, who I am does not match what I do.
Yes.
So it's like, I'm moving forward and I'm like, oh man, if I have to climb the ladder anymore, I'm going to have to really shift who I am. And even at that point, I didn't really know who I was. I couldn't really define it, but I could just feel that it was a dissonance with that.
Sure.
And it's then where I was like, and I was saying to this someone the other day, what even is fulfillment? Everyone talks about, more meaning, more fulfillment. Like, what do we actually mean by it? And I think it's when fulfillment is when you feel like you are reaching your potential, or when you are, because I believe like Marianne Williamson's unbelievable poem, which is like, our deepest fear is not that we are powerful. It's not that our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate, is that we are powerful beyond measure. And she goes on. But that's so true. So I think the lack of fulfillment comes from when you're not in a place where your potential is being reached, or you can see it might be reached, or it's actually being kneecapped. and you're like, this just feels like I have so much more to give, and there's no way I can give it in this environment. I'm not procrastinating. I just know that I have to be a completely different person, and therefore that's not my potential. That's this fake skeleton ghost, whatever you might want to call it, sort of version of me that will go out there and reach that person's potential, that archetype, but it's not my potential. And it's like, so I think that's what fulfillment is. Fulfillment is finding an environment or doing things, acting out in life, in an environment where you feel like, I'm right where I'm meant to be because I'm fulfilling my potential. Or at least I'm on a path, as you say, Annie, like on a path to fulfilling my potential.
Yeah.
And that's very exciting. And that's why people are striving for fulfillment, right? And we just called it fulfillment, but I don't personally want to get lost in that word. Sometimes I just kind of, it becomes a numb word because it's so used, but it doesn't mean it's not really useful. And so with that, then now we've unpacked what fulfillment means. Or at least what I believe. I'm not saying everyone does. But let's answer your question then. If therefore what it is that where you feel like I just need more, I want more, is to do with not reaching your potential or not really knowing what meaning is for you, well, the first thing you need to uncover is what is meaningful to you, what drives you, what is your potential, what does that look like fully expressed? And that's where the values, vision, mission come into its own, right? Because the values and skills, it's good to know what value you have to give. But answering that question of who am I and what's most important to me helps you then see, and I laugh because sometimes it's horribly, tragically painful to look around your circumstances and go, bugger. Now I know what I value and what skills I have. I can clearly see that the environment I'm in, the relationship I'm in, the job I have is not married to my values, is not getting the most out of my skills. And then comes the pain of having to change, right? But at least it's worth it because you've got some data to say, but this is me. And man, this feels like me. Like I have no doubt. I have doubt before and I have fuck all doubt now. Excuse my French. Like, are we going to beep out if I swear? Because I may swear.
Go, it's fine. Okay, no censorship here, my friend.
Oh, okay, great. So, and then it's like, okay, but then what do you do with those values? It's like, now you know what's most important to you, what you're good at. Now, how do you bake that into some kind of, what does more look like for me? Like, I know what's important to me, but then how do I translate that into like, well, what should I do with my life? Where should I go? Where it'll answer that question of, I feel like there's more and I'm not getting it right now. Okay, I can see what's happening around me. So that gives me a foundation. And it's so important, as you can imagine, to get that bit right, as you guys know. But then it's like, there needs to be some direction to that. There needs to be some like, okay, but now where am I going with this? Like, what do I have to do? You know, where am I aiming? How do I get there? What does it look like? And that's where the vision mission piece comes in. Yeah,
absolutely. Because then you know who you are and where you're headed. And it doesn't matter where you are at that point, you know you're on the right path. Whereas before, really, in that life that was unaligned, before all that was uncovered, and like you say, you look around and all of a sudden you've got this painful realization that many things around you that you consider your life need to change. It's like, or should I say, you need to move out of those situations and into other situations, or even create new ones. It's like before, in that unaligned life, we kind of weren't even aware, were we? We weren't even aware that we were headed in the wrong direction. You know, do you know what I'm saying? We were just kind of going along. And it's not as though we were sure we were getting somewhere either. In the back of our mind and in our heart, I believe that if that's the case, if you're living a life that doesn't align with you, somewhere in your being, you know that's the case. Somewhere, and that really, for me, is that feeling of more. It's that knowing coming to the surface, screaming to you, saying, look, it's almost like, in my experience anyway, at least, it's almost like my soul was screaming out to me saying, look, I'm dying here. I'm dying here. Please listen to me. And it was started to scream so loud that I couldn't ignore it. And it was like, then it started to, you know, everything around me, all of the situations that weren't aligning were falling apart because I just didn't have the energy and the motivation or the proclivity to just keep those plates spinning anymore, you know? And it was like, and that was terrifying to me. Terrifying because it all just starts falling apart and you think, oh my God, I'm falling apart. But then the thing is then, when you actually uncover the reason for that, you actually realize that all of that wasn't falling apart. It was actually all just falling into place, because what's going on there is you're uncovering who you really are. And once you then can bring focus and awareness to that through your vision, through your mission, through your values, uncovering these things, then you can set yourself on the right path. And then it doesn't matter what's going on around you. You know where you are and you know where you're headed.
Yes.
It doesn't matter.
Awesome. Yeah, beautifully put. And to finish off, you're quite right. Like, then to answer your question, Tiff, as well, and to finish off where I was. So at that point of chaos, I just completely forgot. I just went so far off a tangent that I didn't even answer the bloody question. Sorry, guys. So at that point in my life when it was just chaos, and I realized that it's so fascinating. Is that how do we know without actually knowing? I mean, that kind of blows my mind a bit. It's like, how do we know that our soul's chipping away, but we don't know what it is that's chipping away really? Like, it's just, again, this like slightly comprehensible like feeling, but we have no way of actually articulating it and grabbing it and doing something with it. And I think that's the power of uncovering and spending some time uncovering your values, vision, and mission, because you take this unknown but known sort of weird, foggy entity that you know is massively sort of dictating your quality of life, but you can't quite grab it. And you make it grabbable. And you articulate it, and you make it usable and tangible, and go, oh, right. So I know actually what things are out of alignment now. I know why I'm feeling like there should be more, because there should be more. And it should be in these ways. More specifically, it should be in these ways. Yeah. And that's what was powerful for me. Both being like, as you say, Andy, like knowing, this is why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling, right? Because I've now finally put words to the feeling. It's weird that we even have to do that, but it's also weird that we even have the feeling. It's amazing.
Yeah, reality occurs in language.
Yes, there you go. Yeah, well said. So then I used the values to guide me as some kind of direction, have some kind of directionality. And then that helped me move away from the current job I had, which was I was European director for a software company, so sales effectively, but commercial director. So I was looking after marketing, anything to do with commercials. And I didn't even like sales and marketing. I really didn't. And I knew that much I knew. But I didn't know too much else depth. Anyway, so I moved away from that to being general manager of a cancer charity, which you guys know is Victoria's Promise. Yeah. And then for me, it was like, well, that's moved me way more into alignment of my values, my skills. It gets way more out of me. I feel way more meaningful, fulfilled by it, because my potential is being reached here. Yeah. Like it's getting everything out of me, but not in a way that's exhausting me. But in a way that if I continue to be more of me, then I will succeed more. Whereas in my previous job, if I was being more me, I'd have more chance of not succeeding.
Yes.
You know what I mean? I'd have to be someone slightly different to succeed. Yeah.
Totally. And then you become aware of that. So therefore, what the propensity is to do is to change who you are to fit in. Right? Exactly. If you want to climb that ladder. And that's what a lot of people are doing, because they can't stop progressing, but they're like, but I can't turn back. I've invested so much in this direction. Oh my gosh. So I'll have to just change who I am in order to just keep going and keep fitting in and not be rejected.
Right. That's just the thing. So if we take that back to the car analogy and being on the road, right? So now you have pickup trucks on this road that are just like, this just doesn't feel right. This just doesn't feel right. This just doesn't feel right. And now they're metamorphosizing into cars, into Ferraris, because that's what works in this. That's what works on this road. Yeah. That's what works on this road. But in the whole time, they're like this big, like, engine. I know they probably both have big engines. I'm not really such a car person, but you know what I'm saying? Like you have this, they're still who they are on the inside. They're still a pickup truck on the inside. Yes. But they're trying, but they're putting on the mask of a Ferrari so that they can keep at least, making it seem like this is working for them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, they're wearing the Ferrari cap. They're wearing the Ferrari jersey, but they're actually sitting in a pickup truck. Yeah, I hear you. But I thought you were also going to say that this idea of investing is such a good point. Like inertia is massive. Like we can't underestimate the inertia and the courage it takes to say, I've gone down the freeway for a long time, or the highway or the motorway in the UK for a long time. Like I'm going to have to get off and go all the way back. Like that's what it feels like. And so I've come so far. Surely I can just drive in a certain way or wear the Porsche hat or Ferrari hat and it will just be okay. But unfortunately, you will get to some point in the road. I believe everyone will get to some point in the road. And for my dad, he's 63 and that's when he's found it. Like at some point in the road where you go, I cannot drive any longer in this car, on this road, in this direction anymore. It's just, it's too much. I break down. But then the other thing I was going to
break down.
Breakdown, right?
Yeah, another good car analogy there.
Yeah, I think we've got to stop there now because it's stop while we're on a high. But the other thing you mentioned, Andy, and I just want to touch on this because it's so like relevant to our time right now, and that's like quite a few of us are probably in chaos. Quite a few of us are where there's a mess around us, and like you say, it could be just that it's falling into place. And what I took from that, other than sort of your main point, but this other thing came in my mind, which was the opportunity. So there's an opportunity when your frameworks, I was talking about where you build up frameworks to see through, and Jordan Peterson was the one that sort of introduced me to that sort of analogy. But imagine all of your frameworks are now broken because you've been made redundant, or, your wife's cheated on your husband or whatever, like anything, any massive bit of chaos.
Yeah.
Then it goes, oh, well, if I'm made redundant, maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I'm not good enough to be employed, or maybe I shouldn't really go back to that industry because maybe that's not really where I should be going. Or you've been told you've got to go back into the office, and it's like, do I really want to re-energize and get myself geared up again to go back into the office? Maybe I don't want to be doing this anymore. All these are big questions that can break quite a few of the walls of this framework that you spent quite a lot of your adult life building. Mm-hmm. But what's wonderful about that is that all of us have built some parts of our framework that aren't quite true to who we are, let's be honest, that are like maybe are to appease our parents so that when they call every 2 weeks, you've got something to tell them, right? That might not turn into an argument. So we've all got parts of like our framework that might not be true to ourselves. I think that's maybe true to say, or fair to say. So, but when it all comes crashing down, there's a wonderful opportunity to rebuild those frameworks, but with even more integrity, even more like alignment to who you really are. Mm-hmm. So it is a wonderful opportunity as well to reinstantiate your values and frameworks using the values, vision, mission kind of
got you. And that's the experience of being on the right road, isn't it? Like you say.
Yes, exactly.
Knowing where you're going, and it's that opportunity to now you're going down this road that was this long straight road, and at one point you realize that you're going in completely the wrong direction, or there's a sinkhole at the end of it, and if you keep driving you're just going to go into the hole. It's like, well, just because you've been going for so long, does it mean you keep driving and disappear into that hole? Mm-hmm. Or do you have the guts to turn around and just keep going back? Because the quicker you do that, the less time it's going to take to get back to where you need to be, right?
Yes.
So you wouldn't just keep going, would you? You have to turn around and come back.
No, and it's like the pit stops, right? Like you got the opportunity to put new tires on, but tires that actually suit the road, right? And that's what we're saying here. You've got an opportunity to rebuild in a way that's going to be better and more effective and efficient for your journey. Mm-hmm. You've got to know what that journey is, right?
That's what it's all about. You've got to know what the journey is. Yeah.
I was just going to say, it takes massive amounts of courage to choose that.
Yes.
Yeah.
It does. It takes massive amounts of courage to choose that. But from experience, it is so worth it. It is so worth it.
I mean, in terms of follow the calling, which is obviously why we called the podcast what we called it. It's like that realization when you're going down the road and you realize what that is you're listening to your heart's calling. It's your heart's calling. It's your soul crying out to you saying, listen, this is who you really are. Listen to me and pay attention and act on what I'm telling you, and you will receive fulfillment. Mm-hmm. Right. And so it's like, that's what it means to follow the calling. That's what it means. But it takes courage. It takes guts, because we're not always in the most ideal situation to all of a sudden just do a 180 and go back the other way. It's never going to be easy. And, it's like, but it doesn't have to be easy. It just has to be the right thing for you. Right.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Amen to that. Completely agree.
Well
said.
And there is an element of ease that comes along with that, because you no longer have this constant discord about, I mean, maybe it's there in the opposite direction for a little while, but there's that feeling that there's more is, it begins to find a place of peace in moving in that direction, and because you can feel that, you just have to keep going, and it's not necessarily comfortable, and maybe sometimes it doesn't necessarily feel easy, but really that's just because you've spent all of your life programming yourself to move in this other direction.
Definitely.
And now it's an unraveling of all of that. Now it's a shifting of gears, a shifting of direction.
And the other thing is as well, that now that it's aligned with who you really are, everything you're doing has meaning.
Yes.
It has meaning. So it doesn't matter if it's difficult. It doesn't matter if it's not easy.
Right.
Your suffering now is not pointless.
Right.
Your suffering has meaning. There's a reason why you're putting yourself through this, and the reason is bigger than the suffering. So you can keep going. Whereas if you're going in the wrong direction, your suffering very quickly becomes bigger than your reason for moving forward. So you just start to lose motivation.
Yes.
The only reason you can keep going is because the destination is worth it. Because it is a reflection of who you truly are on the inside. You know what I'm saying? And
well said. Yeah, beautifully said.
Yeah.
And your unique mission, right? And that's the thing that's difficult to uncover, but it's there. And I think we've all got a part to play there. Yeah, go for it.
I would like, we have a few minutes left here, Dino, and I would like to, because I mean, we've really kind of touched on this, and I think we're just holding people in suspense, honestly.
Okay.
And I would like to just speak, doesn't have to be long, but just quickly around specifically values, vision, mission, and how knowing your values. So this is another reason why uncovering those for yourself is really important to help define, maybe that's the right word or not, the other two, to help us articulate the other two, and how all of that really comes together to support people in where we kind of started this part of the conversation. Was it helps people to harness that feeling of more and to actually take it somewhere.
Yeah, I think ultimately everyone has this feeling of more, and this is my personal belief, because they have a unique mission in life. I really feel that everyone has a unique mission in life based on, and you can either look at that existentially, if you believe in a creator and that you have sort of a destiny to fulfill, or you could, I also believe it from a sort of a more experiential point of view, where you've had a set of experiences up to this point of your life that's given you, a bit like that Liam Neeson quote, that's given you a set of skills, a very specific set of skills. But it's also giving you a specific set of values. And it's also giving you a specific set of problems that you've uniquely solved. And I think, therefore, we all have a corner of the world that we can impact in a very unique way. And what I mean by unique is both the thing could be unique. Like for some people, it may be orphans. For some people, it may just be, it may be creating a business or a mini economy in their village, or it may be creating, helping with climate change. It may be helping with plastic situation. It may be helping with agriculture shifts. Like it could be so different. But the point is it's yours. And it's based on your set of experiences. It's based on the suffering that you've seen, the suffering that you've transcended, or that you've seen, like that you've been a part of. You know what I mean? Like it's something that you've experienced. It's why the pain, it makes the pain that you've been through a lot of the time worth it, because you tend to use that pain to then help others transcend the same thing, but in a short period of time. And so goes on. the proliferation of good, I think, in the world. And I think that's how we're going to solve the complex problems like climate change and immigration, all these other things that are sort of so massive, and even political stuff. Like, we need more brains on important topics and challenging problems. And the way that we do that is by making sure people are on the track that they were born to be on.
Yeah.
And I think the way to do that is to make people aware that you have a unique mission and help them uncover it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it's like, oh, go do what you were born to do. It's like, well, how the hell do I figure that out? And that's what I've been trying to figure out since I was like 12, 13 years old. And I was like reading self-development books and Tony Robbins before I was 18, because I was like so hungry for this, because I know there's more. What is it? Who am I here to be, and who am I here to serve? And I think when you uncover your values, so to answer your question, Tiff, so if you know what you value and what's most important to you, it tends to be what you want to give other people as well. Mm-hmm. Tends to be what you want, how you want to serve other people.
Yeah.
So understanding your values, then you want to use that and bake that into the target that you have for your life, because you know you want these things in your life. You know these are the most important things in your life. Therefore, why don't we aim at it? And we said that there's a hierarchy to our values, because our values are guiding us to the thing that we most value, our highest value, shall we say. But what does that look like fully expressed in the world? What does that actually look like as a vision? Mm-hmm. And that's why I think we should all just have some kind of a vision statement that's high level enough to keep you going and have that North Star. So no matter what comes at you and where you go and what road you take, that North Star kind of stays and doesn't sway. Mm-hmm. But then low level enough to give you some kind of direction. And that's quite a tough balance, but that's the balance that you want to strike with a vision. Then with your mission, it's the high level milestones to get to that vision. Okay. And that is so critical, because that's the role that you want to play, that based on your unique set of skills, your unique set of experiences of suffering and transcending suffering, what role you want to play to actually make that vision a reality. Mm-hmm. And also baking in your values, making sure that you enjoy the journey and that it's a meaningful and important journey to you is so critical as well. Baking your values, make sure you've got your role exactly like you said, so that the reason is always bigger than the objection, that the reason is always bigger than the pain.
Yes.
That's kind of how I think they should all work together, and why it's so important, and why it's part of my vision. Like, it's why I do it. It's because I think the world will be a better place if people were doing what they were actually meant to do. And they were being the people that they were actually meant to be, and solving the problems that they are uniquely placed to solve, given the suffering that they've been through. It may be that you just want to help people, help elderly people, just because your nan was always on her own. Yeah. And you never want an elderly person to be on their own forever. So you create nursing homes, or you create a whole community around, so that elderly people are never alone. Whatever it is, doesn't matter. It's just got to be massively meaningful to you. And the way to know that is to look at your past. The clues are there. Clues already in you. There's a wonderful quote. Sorry, I'll just finish this whole thing on this wonderful quote. And I'm just going to read it just so I don't butcher it. And it's from a guy called Doshin Nelson Roshi, who's a Zen master. And I heard it in an interview and I was like, God, this is so good. Rather than trying to find your place in the world, first find yourself, and there will be your place. It's all there. It's all there.
Yeah.
Right?
Gives me chills.
Yes. So anyway, so that's that answer. Hopefully that rounds off that answer.
It does. It does. Having everybody operate from their own unique zone of genius.
Exactly.
Right? Because everybody is a genius. It's just that it's like if you it's like that saying, isn't it? If you try and get a fish to climb a tree, then the fish is going to think that it's this useless creature that can't do anything. Exactly. That's not the fish's zone of genius, right? The fish wasn't ever meant to climb the tree, you know, but it's like we all have our own unique zones of genius, and it's just that we feel less than because we're operating in an environment that is not allowing us to fulfill on that potential. And it's recognizing that potential and identifying it that can allow us to operate within an environment that does absolutely support our zone of genius, and therefore maximizes the contribution and impact that we can make for ourselves and everyone around in the world, right? And
which is part of the fulfilling bit, right? Yeah.
Exactly. And this is why you call your company Ultimate Contribution Uncovered, right? Because it's literally where the contribution comes from, is knowing who you are. Because until you know that, and until you know what you have to offer, how can there be any contribution, really?
not to that level. How can you play big? How can you get that bit where that meaning that like there's more? How do you get rid of that? Well, you got to live into your potential, but you got to know what that potential even looks like. And so the linearity goes
so that you can aim for it. Yeah.
So you can aim for it. Exactly.
This is exactly why I became a facilitator in Ultimate Contribution Uncovered. It is why we're having this conversation with you today, Dino, because Andy and I believe so much in helping people to uncover what more is for them, to helping people have this direction in their lives, to helping people live into their full potential. It is the path that we have been on personally, knowing that for ourselves. And I can say probably for the last year, that feeling of more for me is no longer there. And it is such a relief.
Yeah,
it is such a relief. And it feels a little bit interesting to even hear myself say that. But, but I know that to be true. I know that to be true. And we're such a stand for helping other people to do the same.
Well, do you know what you do though, Tiff, what you both do that's even also elevates this whole discussion is that just because you know where you're going and you know who you are, it doesn't mean all your problems are gone.
No.
But what it does is it gets you, as you say, and it gets you on the path. It gets you starting a race you didn't even know you wanted to start. But it puts you at the start line of a race that you want to race in forever. The game that you always want to play, right? The one that you feel like you're going to have so much fun. And you're going to be aligned, but what you guys do with the game and like the whole setup is like, okay, well, once you found that, I know people are at different stages, right? But if you could still join the game after, obviously you've uncovered all of this, like your values, your vision, your mission, then you need that community. That's what Toledo is great for too, to keep going, to keep the courage to move through the obstacles that are now going to be in your way and that are going to feel really tough because you're on a path and it's so meaningful to you now that those problems are also going to be meaningful, but also like it's navigating all of that, right? Like it's not just as simple as just like once we've solved like the problem of where to go and who I am, that's it. Like, but like you say, the relief when you do that is huge and it puts you on the start line of the race and like just be in the race, man. Just be in the race. There's so much more fun being in the race than watching someone else race. But well done to you guys for actually helping people then go out and deliver it. Is what I guess what I'm going for.
Thank you.
It is about living into that because, and this is part of the problem. People are reading all these books and they're taking all these courses and they're doing all of these things, but it's like once that's done, then the motivation behind that or the inspiration behind that begins to fade and they're not actually taking this stuff and really implementing it, developing a relationship with these tools and implementing it into their life. And that is a big piece of what it is that we do in the Polaris game. It's like bring all of those things, the books that you've read, the courses that you've taken, Ultimate Contribution Uncovered, bring all of these things to the table and let's put them into action. Let's be the people that we need to be be the person that we need to be to have the results that we want to have. It's about the being, it's about living into that version of you and shifting.
It's about closing the gap between who you are and what you do. Like what you were saying, Dino, is like your life looked nothing like who you knew yourself to be, and it's that horrible realization. But it's like closing that gap is like, because when you do close that gap, it's like that's when that feeling of more goes away, because there is no longer what you do, there is only who you are. And then it's like, well, then I haven't got to be someone to go to work, and I haven't got to be someone in my family. It's just there is only who I am, and my life is just a reflection of who I am. And there's just these things that I do naturally that I don't have to sort of really bestir myself to do because I hate doing them. It's like that feeling of more has gone away because your life is a reflection of who you are.
I love the idea of it reflecting, because when it reflects, it actually then encourages that behavior. So it starts to become a positive spiral,
Yes.
right? Because you see yourself in the environment. You're like, oh, I'm getting validation. I'm in the right place. Validation. Whereas when you're in the wrong place, it's like you're meeting like a brick wall. You're getting no validation. And that's quite a hard and stark place to be. So yeah, and even having this conversation, right? Like I get to have conversations with people like you two. It's such a meaningful and enjoyable conversations, because we've both put ourselves in this environment for us to have this conversation, and we get to be aligned in it. So yeah, it's well said.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
So with that, I really feel like we've come full circle.
Yeah.
And I just want to thank you again, Dino, for being with us today and being part of this conversation. It is a lot of fun, and I think we've all learned something.
Absolutely.
So if those of you who are listening want to learn more about Dino's work with Ultimate Contribution, and really our work with Ultimate Contribution, you can find the links to that in the show notes. And just want also to let you know that we will be continuing this conversation with Dino in the Guardians Lounge, which is exclusive to our Follow the Calling podcast community on Facebook. And in that space, we regularly invite 2 community members to join us. So if you're interested in joining Andy and Dino and I in a more intimate, exclusive space, make sure you go over and join the Follow the Calling podcast community and let us know. Once you've listened to this episode that you would be interested in sitting in on that, and we'll see what we can arrange. And of course, the link for that will also be in the show notes. And of course, if you like this episode, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. And just again, thank you so much, Dino, for being here with us. Do you have any final words?
Oh, just to say, massively enjoyed the conversation. I'm definitely like more enriched as a result of having the conversation. Thank you guys for your reflections and your thoughts. I've learned a lot, and I've had a lot of fun. Thank you for setting this up. Appreciate it.
Likewise. Thank you. Thank you,
Dino. We'll speak to you all soon next week.
Yeah, I look forward to that.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thank you for showing up for yourself and exploring this space with us. We are a stand for you to follow your calling, whatever that might be.
Be sure to subscribe, and if you're interested in playing with the concepts we share on this podcast and you'd like to continue this conversation with us, we invite you to join us in the Follow the Calling podcast community on Facebook, and you can find the link for that in the show notes.